3, 2, 1. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Indie Comic Show Hangout episode number 4, featuring a very special guest, Joe Corallo. Joe, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's absolutely my honor. You are the biggest star that I've ever had on my show, so it's mine and Skip's show. He's just not able to be here tonight.
That's okay.
He might show up later. He does kind of jump out of the shadows like a ninja.
That's fair.
Sometimes.
Always happy to see Skip. So.
Yeah, he's a good guy. But thank you again for being here. You recently had a comic book. You are a comic book writer.
Correct.
Some people may know you for, and you recently had a debut issue come out. It's from Mad Cave Studios. It is called Becstar, and
yes.
I have had the pleasure of reading it, and I wanted to sit here and talk with you. Aside from being a world-renowned comic book writer, you're also a YouTube personality and just all-around good guy. So,
well, thank you. Thank you.
I thought it would be fun to just sit here and have a drink, chat about things we like, talk about the book.
Yeah, you do that.
Yeah, cool. You guys in the chats that are here listening in, I appreciate you being here. Hopefully you've had a chance to check out Becstar as well. You can get it from your local comic book shop. You do not, I repeat, you do not have to go onto some crowdfunding thing and throw a bunch of money and wait many months. You can get it at your local comic book shop, and it's $3.99. I would say that is a fair price for an indie comic. Of these days. So, are you excited? Did the launch go well as expected?
Yeah, no, it's been going well. I heard from a few shops that they sold out their initial orders and had to reorder, which is great. I mean, this is an independent comic. When they say they sold out, they're not talking about, oh, we went through 50 copies, but it's still nice, that stores that were taking a chance on this book, it worked out, and they were able to sell them, and yeah.
So you're saying it didn't perform as well as X-Men #1 with Jim Lee?
No, not there. It might, yeah. I mean, there's certainly less copies of Beckstars and dollar bins in your local comic shop scattered throughout the country than X-Men #1s.
Well, good. That is that's a good sign. Sorry, I'm drinking a nice Sam Adams. I always like to talk about, and this is a blatant ripoff from Perch, I admit, because I like the guy quite a bit. I always talk about my streams. I'm drinking Sam Adams Boston Lager tonight. Are you drinking anything?
I am just having good old fashioned H2O.
H2O.
H2O, yeah.
All right, cool, very good.
It's I'm not trying to be a prude. This was just kind of winging it. I was busy earlier today, and then I was like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to get booze, and my allergies have been acting up. I could go on and on, but it's fine.
All right, so I should probably keep it a secret that that's really a glass of vodka.
Yeah, I mean, don't mention that. Cut that.
I will absolutely not mention that. So, getting into things, when did you first get into comics as a fan?
I mean, that was definitely Sonic the Hedgehog issue 28 from Archie Comics. That's the one that I really got into comics with, because I was aware of comics, but I was big into Sonic the Hedgehog. And I remember it was a friend of mine, Brian Rush's birthday, and I had some friends over, and everyone got like a little party favor, and I got some little Mega Man figurines, and his other friend got this like a Sonic the Hedgehog comic, and I was just like, they make comics of this guy, and from there, at some point, I was at Kmart with my mom. It was in like third grade. There was Sonic the Hedgehog issue 28, and I was like, "There, all right, I'm gonna get in on this whole comic book thing." My mom at the time had asked me, like, before she bought it, she was like, Are you just gonna look at it for the pictures, or are you gonna read it?" I'm like, I'm gonna read it. Like, it's even to a third grader, it's a little condescending,
Right.
So yeah, so then that spawned into going, dragging my poor parents around to different comic shops. There were a bunch of comic shops on Long Island at the time. I remember getting one from there. There used to be a couple of shops down in Hicksville. I forget the name of this one that used to be next to like a Chevrolet dealership. It was like a very small strip mall that was mostly the dealership, and there were a couple stores in it. And I remember getting comics there once. And I barely remember anything about the shop other than like the guy was very much your stereotypical Simpsons comic book guy kind of guy. I remember getting stuff and I paid, and like before I had the chance to say like, thanks, have a good day, he did the whole like, "You're welcome" thing. And that stayed with me, and that had to have been 27 years ago. And I remember that. And that business isn't there, but the memory's still there. And that guy, he could be dead.
Wow, that's some story.
Yeah, right. And I got a ton of stories like that for you.
All right.
We could pad out that hour, but no, there was it Stinky's Comics? I got some comics over there. Captain Comics.
Wait, there was a
not
store
only
called,
baseball cards.
There was a store called Stinky's Comics.
Yeah, I think it might still be around.
That is amazing. That's so rad.
Yeah, I'm Googling it now. Yep, Stinky's Comics and or collectibles. It's permanently closed recently. Victim of COVID. Oh well, but
that's what happens when you don't have good hygiene.
It's COVID true, but it was around for quite a bit there. Let me see. Still got like an active Facebook page, I guess. Let me pull this out. Well, we last posted in 2017. So yeah. It had a good run. I mean, I was a kid, and then, the fact that it was still around, had to have been around for 20 something years. But yeah. Collector's Kingdom. That store burned down, and then the owner died.
Jeez. And so just tragedy follows you wherever you go, is what you're saying.
Is it me, or is it all really just go back to Sonic the Hedgehog? We'll never know.
It could be. Could be that.
But,
so,
yeah.
Moving along here, talking about comics and just getting a little get to know you personally as a comic fan. We know you started at Sonic the Hedgehog, but what's the comic series that you would say is like closest to your heart, that sort of really cemented like, I love comics? Do you have one?
Yeah. It's tough because it's, it changes a bit over time. Like, what was it? What really got me into like Marvel was Ultimate Spider-Man and Runaways. Those were coming out around the same time. So it would be like Runaways definitely is up there for me in just terms of like, I love this. Then what was it? Astonishing X-Men, what was up there for me at the time. That I have fond memories of. I'd meet up with a friend of mine, Jake, and we'd go to Fourth World Comics because he went to Stony Brook out here on Long Island. We'd each pick up a copy. We'd come back to go back to his campus, and we'd read it, talk about it, hang out. So that was good. For that, Walking Dead was up there too. That was a little after. I want to say I was out of college at that time. I was probably like, I think they were up to like the 7th or 8th trade of Walking Dead when I had a bunch of friends who were really into it and got me into that. And then Starman by James Robinson has really got me into DC. That was a series where I went out and hunted for like the Golden Age comics that tied into it. So I after I read that, I read like Golden Age, Starman, Sandman, Phantom Lady, and a bunch of those other characters. Uh, so that really uh, that was a really big deal for me. Was Starman, and still is. I own an original page of Starman. Uh, so that was special. Doom Patrol is special. That's a series where uh, I started working by a Midtown Comics around, it was like 2011, so 10 years ago, and I worked around there for more than a few years, like about 6 years. And the first thing I bought there was a hardcover copy of God Loves, Man Kills.
Hmm.
And it was one of those things I would pop in all the time. Like during my lunch break, I'm walking around, I'm like, oh, I'll pop in. So I was there multiple times a week. And, got to know the staff there. One of the staffers there, Sam Johns, who now is doing, punchline stuff at DC. But anyway, there was this guy who was working there at the time, Jeremy. And we really hit it off. We had similar tastes, and we'd recommend things to each other. But when we were first talking, I asked him about something that he was really into, and he had all this praise for Doom Patrol, and that got me to pick up those Grant Morrison trades. And I loved that. I read it so many times. I've since gotten the omnibus. I own a page from that. I have a painting that Richard Case gave me of Doom Patrol. That one's definitely very high on the list for me. But there's a bunch of things. X-Men. I've read a disgusting amount of X-Men, which is still not everything.
So there's not there's not like a singular thing. It's just kind of a broad.
Tough. I think so, because different things represent different times and different things to me. There'll always be that special place for things like X-Men and Batman. Growing up with the cartoons, and then exploring the comics after that. Characters I probably am more into Superman and Captain America at this point in my life than I was as a kid. Although I did really like the Superman cartoon and the movies and all that, and I've always been interested in Captain America. But and I'll be honest here, this is probably a hot take for some people. I read the Brubaker Captain America stuff and I liked it. I didn't fall in love with Captain America until I read the older stuff.
No, I can relate to you. I'm kind of the same way. I was like, when I was younger, getting into comics, I was like Superman, Captain America. Those are boring guys.
Yeah.
Now as I'm older, I have a lot more respect for those characters, quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way, which is weird because a lot of people would assume the opposite. They would assume, oh, a kid likes that. They assume that characters like Superman and Captain America are very simple and not appealing to adults, whereas it's almost been the opposite for a lot of people I've talked to. They come to appreciate these characters later, like you were saying.
So, when did you get your first start as a comics pro? What was that first foot through the door moment? How did you
First
achieve being what you are?
First foot through the door was probably when I had a 4-page comic in the GEEKS App Presents Power anthology from 2014, which Sam Johns was the illustrator on. It was a bit of a take on the Legion of Superheroes that I did in 4 pages. Obviously not those characters because it was, an independent anthology. Prior to that...
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, prior to that, I had a false start. I had done a a self-published comic. We ended up doing 4 issues called Electronic, which was like this like cyberpunk kind of book that I was doing with Danny Lucker. And Danny Lucker does a bunch of stuff with Colin Bunn now. He did Red Mother over at Boom. He's been successful at this as an artist. But we had done an issue and got interest. I had submitted it to this small publisher that does like immediately went defunct. Like nothing ever happened. That was called Venturous Press. It was like VIP was like what they put on it, and they were rolling out a few titles, like just three, like I think it was like 3 titles, and one of them was electronic. So this is back in like 2012. And yeah, the guy Terry was out in like Denver. He printed some copies, did like a black and white like sketch cover kind of like variant kind of thing. Not a sketch cover, but it was the pencil like cover of the book, which I still think I have some of those copies somewhere. But it was, you know, a total shit show. It was like wasn't paid, was no talk of like comps. Like that when I was talking to him about like what about comps, he was kind of like, I don't know, you know, I could send you some of the unsold copies from the comp. Like the guy had no idea what the hell he was doing. I'm still Facebook friends with him, but they wished me a happy birthday the other day. No, so I don't know, but that was like the false start, and then Electronic was picked up again by another publisher that never went anywhere. God, I'm trying to think of the name of that.
Well,
one.
for those for those laymen out there that just
Mhm.
you know, we're fans, we read books and we enjoy them and so, but
Sure.
what was the process? I mean, in a short, you know, mile high view of it, did you just have to like do you send submissions to people? Like, how do you get that foot in the door to become a published writer?
I mean, in those instances, those were blind submissions, but it's very hard to get anywhere that way. And even in those instances, it didn't go anywhere. The book never came out twice. So a lot of people have stories like that.
Sure.
I'm also waiting. I'm also waiting. I have a 4-page story I did in an anthology that was supposed to come out through Greyhaven, and they like kind of like went under, and they've gone back and since published some stuff that they're waiting for, but it was this like music anthology. I did this 4-page story that was like kind of like an allegory to David Bowie that, you know, was very much like he had just passed away. It was timely, and now it's been like, you know, 5 years, just like that song by David Bowie. And yeah, it's a shame. I would have liked that one to come out, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. You have to, if you're trying to make it in comics and you're trying to get a break, do not be discouraged if you have a false start or you think you have your break and it doesn't happen, because that's a lot of people's stories. A lot of people breaking in have those stories.
Now, in the world of comics, I know lots of writers, or not writers, I'm sorry, lots of artists, pencilers.
Sure.
We'll talk about their big influences, right? It might have been like, oh, I grew up loving Jim Lee and I just wanted to draw like him. And many of them have those influences until they get big, and then they might, you know, go off of their own direction and become someone else's influence or what have you. But as a writer, do you have any influences like that? Was there any people that you were just like, oh, I want to write like this person, or just
you know there's no one I ever wanted to write like exactly. Obviously, you know, there's all the cliches of, you know, you read stuff by Alan Moore, Frank Miller, Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison, stuff like that. Like there are stories I wanted to do. Certainly, Grant's Doom Patrol and Rachel Pollack's Doom Patrol have both been influential, but there was never one person I just wanted to like ape their style. That was never really what I wanted to do. What I find myself doing is being less less concerned of the overall influence and more on the structure. So like it's not necessarily the writer per se, but some elements of it, like Roger Stern and Mark Grunwald are certainly two people I draw influence from too. But there's certain eras of comics. Like what's important to me is that I'm telling a full story that people are getting something out of it, that there's content in there. I don't like, I hate when I get a comic and it feels like it's part one of a 22-part story and they had to pad out, and it's like 6 pages of a conversation between two people. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like that kind of stuff. I hate that. So why should I write something that I would hate? I want to get something where I feel like something was accomplished in the issue or the short. Really hone the craft that way. Paul Levis would be another example. That's someone who got his start writing shorter, like backup stories, and knew, like, had to manage that space and be like, okay, how much of a story can I tell in the small amount of space? Jerry Conway he was a later influence. I didn't read enough Jerry Conway when I was younger. It wasn't until probably the past decade that I actually started reading more and more like Jerry Conway. Same thing, like the last page of Amazing Spider-Man 122 is a story all on itself. It's just 9 panels, and it's with Peter ripping into MJ for coming in talking to him after Gwen Stacy died, and then it's MJ like hesitating. You think she's gonna leave, but then she shuts the door, and then you realize she stayed. That's 1 page, and it's a brilliant story just contained in 1 page. I like looking at pages like that and being like, can I tell a story in this page? Can this comic be multiple stories? And obviously, connected. You want to tell a coherent story, but can you get a lot in it? And if this came out now, that 1 page would be a whole issue.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a really interesting observation that I feel like I've held, but I haven't been able to solidify it until you just put it into words like that. One thing I've been noticing in the writing today in comics is that you talk about just the decompression. You didn't use that word, but you're just stretching out a story into oblivion. It seems to be a modern style, but when I look at all the best writers, or I believe are the best writers today, what I'm noticing is not only are they not doing that, but they're telling multiple stories in every issue. They're bouncing between different characters in different settings and locations that are each kind of having a story that might just be a few pages, and that's a story in itself, and then it cuts over to another character, and then that has a few pages, and that's a story in itself, and then by the time you get to the entire end of the issue, those things maybe end up connecting and resolving a bigger part of the story, and you're like, wow, okay. And one of the biggest examples that I can use of that is a book that I just finished reading. It's a long saga, is East of West. Have you had a chance to read that particular series by Hickman?
I have not finished it. I am not caught up. But
that's fine. There's millions of comics. You can't expect everyone to to read everything. But it's a great example. Is the reason I bring it up, because every book feels like it's multiple stories, and you get to the end of the book itself, and you feel like, okay, that was a story. Then you get at the end of the 5-issue arc that puts into a trade paperback, and you feel like, man, he had the forethought to realize that these 5 issues would bookend, and fit into a trade, and then they have its own resolution, and it's constantly feeling like stories within stories, and nothing ever feels bloated or stretched out, and it keeps you engaged as a reader. So, sorry, just
No, no,
one of
no. That's
one of the things that
important.
I've noticed, and you brought it. It's like I love to hear writers say stuff like that because it feels like, oh, here's someone who gets it. They're not just writing, hey,
Yeah.
look, there's 5 pages of eating food.
Yeah, and another thing here, what I believe, and this has been my philosophy with writing comics for years, and so far it hasn't steered me wrong yet. But every single story could be told in one panel, and you have to act like if I had one panel, what would that panel be?
Oh,
And
that's
then it's like, oh, now I get a whole page. How would I tell the story in a page? I get 8 pages, I get an issue, I get 5 issues, and you expand from there.
wow. I like that. Is that something that you came up with, or did someone pass along that wisdom to you?
You know, it's possible someone else had that. I sort of base this on um, more of the idea of just a whole page, like one page can be a story. Which I think Scott Snyder has said before, is the idea of like you should treat each page like it's its own story. Like you can like treat your pages like they have a beginning, middle, and end. And I kind of like extrapolated from there. It's very possible. I'm not saying I created this. I'm sure other people have thought it too, and can look it up and be like, so Will Eisner said that, 1955 or whatever. I don't know. It's possible, but that's how I approach it.
Okay. Well, before we get into Becstar, your new comic,
Mhm. Yeah.
just one last thing, kind of on the general topic area we're at.
Mhm.
Is comic books, is that your kind of preferred medium? Did you come into it being, man, I love comics, I want to write comics one day? Or are you someone who maybe has another medium that you're kind of wishing you could write in, and comics is just one of the many things that you're exploring?
I mean, I like writing. I I would much rather write as a job than other things. Like something I do on the side is like marketing copywriting. It's boring, boring stuff. Coming up with like blog copy for like an HVAC
Right.
maintenance company or something like that. But for me, I would rather be writing as the job
Sure.
and getting paid to write than doing like almost anything else. So in terms of that, while comics are what I want to be doing, it's what I want to be pursuing, it's what I want to be creating. I'm not against. I'm certainly not against the idea of doing something outside of comics. If it were, I'd probably prefer that it was me having a hand in something I created or was involved in than you know not like I'm certainly not looking for using this as a platform to break into like writing TV or something like that. And honestly, I think anyone who is probably an idiot because it's the other way around right now. They try to bring in TV writers to write comics because these people have such gigantic egos that they think anyone cares about who a TV writer is and that would somehow elevate a book. Weird stuff.
Right, right. Well, I got a chance once to meet J. Michael Straczynski and
Hmm.
listen to him talk about writing and things like that.
Sure.
And he mentioned, like, the way he talks, he refers to himself kind of like you. He's a writer. He
Hmm.
will write anything. He'll write news articles, magazines, comics, TV shows, movies.
Yeah, yeah.
He is whatever. And in the talk I talked to him, he'd mentioned out he just sort of cycles through because he talked about how the industries will, like, you kind of not get washed up, but they'll get kind of tired of you and
Oh
opportunities
yeah.
will start to dwindle. And so you just have to be ready to move on and go, well, the TV industry isn't hot on me right now, so I'm going to go write in this other area, and he talks about that. But there are some people who just have a driving passion, and they're just like, I just want to write this one type of thing forever and ever. And there's nothing wrong with either way. I was just curious if you had a specific, like if comics is my dying love, or if money no object, you could write any medium you wanted and get paid exactly the same. You didn't have to worry about money. What would be the one medium you would love writing the most?
I mean, it would still probably be comics.
All right.
You know, I would still like. That said, like it would be nice to, you know, if we're speaking just purely ideally, it would be like, it'd be nice to write a screenplay that gets made. Sure. It would be nice to write an episode of a TV show or something. I have one short story that's been published in a prose anthology. You know, I like writing comics more. But the industry is in a very weird place because there are a lot of people who are getting agents. And these literary agents take these comics people. They get them like a deal at like a Scholastic or HarperCollins Random House, you know, something like that. Then, after they do that maybe a couple of times, they start trying to get them into prose because it's easier, because you're just repping one person. It's a quicker turnaround than a big graphic novel to just write out like a manuscript. So you got all these comics people who are then putting their, you know, dipping their toes into prose when they never wanted to in the first place. I mean, a lot of these comics pros don't even want to be doing YA or middle grade graphic novels, and they're doing it because their agents are, you know, pushing them to do it, and these companies have no idea what the hell they're doing.
Well, it's becoming like a job for a lot of people, right? Like you were talking about the other things you do marketing and things.
Yeah.
You're not doing that because that's your lifelong passion. You got to pay the bills. and so sometimes you do the things that aren't your number one choice. And I think, unfortunately, when some of these artistic careers, you're seeing a lot of people who are like, comics aren't my number one passion, but I guess I'll write some. My agent got me a job, you know.
I mean, I know someone who's told me that their agent, because they also work, you know, outside in like TV and other places, their agent hates it when they do comics.
Oh yeah,
because they're not getting paid as much money as if they were doing TV. So they hate it. They keep telling them like, stop writing comics. Like, you know, there's that. There's, you know, you talk to some of these people, some of these creators. If you know them, if you're friends with them, you know, some of them, you'll be like, oh, you're doing this like YA graphic novel about some like girl who found like a dragon that keeps her from getting bullied or whatever. And they're like, yeah, you know, it's just something I'm doing. Agent wanted me to come up with a pitch for a specific kind of thing. I came up with some ideas. We pitched it. I'm getting paid, you know, 5 figures to write this. Whatever. They don't care. And it shows in a lot of these things. There's a deluge of YA middle grade graphic novels, and they're all the same. And we're looking at something that could be a huge bubble bursting in a few years from now. But the attitude of a lot of people, rightfully so, I would give this exact same advice to people. Take the money while it's there.
Well, speaking of comic books and having a passion for them, let's talk about your book, Becstar.
Sure.
Which I'm going to assume it's your book, and you have a passion for it. So,
sure.
I have been a longtime fan of indie comics myself, and I know it doesn't really show because since I've gotten back into comics, indies is a way different industry than it used to be when I was kind of growing up and into comics. Indies used to be people making comics out of their bedroom. You know, those guys over at Mirage Studios, they did TMNT, like literally, I
Sure.
think, out of their bedroom.
Hmm.
And they put it together. It was like black and white
Hmm.
on the crappiest paper. They couldn't even get more than 2 colors for the cover, but it
Mm.
was a passion project. They weren't doing it because they
Yeah.
were like, we're gonna be rich and have movie rights, and they didn't think about those things. So I
Hmm.
grew up reading comics like TMNT, Boris the Bear. Um, Geez, I'm trying to remember. Fish Police. Do you remember Fish Police?
I remember the cartoon Fish Police.
Okay, that was one of the
I didn't read
few.
the comic, but
It was one of the few weirdo comics that made it. That was when everyone was trying to
yeah.
like, hey, we could cash in on TMNT.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
Everyone was trying to get.
I watched so much of that stuff.
I forgot
Yeah,
there was
there
a
was
cartoon of it. To be honest.
there's a there was a cartoon of Fish Police. Was it Biker Mice from Mars? There was the Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Was another TMNT knockoff. Obviously, Street Sharks.
Yeah. So
That lasted for like a decade. The TMNT knockoff.
everyone was trying to strike gold. So, but one of the things I always liked about indie comics, I'm a Marvel fan through and through. I was an X-Men
Sure.
fanboy. That was my anchor into comics. And
There you
everything
go.
else was just like, hey, this is kind of cool too, but nothing was X-Men to me. Chris Claremont, X-Men, that was the goose. That was, my golden goose. But I liked
Sure.
exploring some other things. And one of the things I always loved about the indie books scene was that it felt more like just like indie bands, music bands,
Hmm.
right? The bands that don't have a
Sure.
big contract. They're just playing at a nightclub or a bar. They're a garage band, and they
Hmm.
don't have the polish necessarily that you're gonna get from AAA studio, but there's
Sure.
something more honest about it. Even if
Hmm.
it's more raw, there's that you feel these guys are doing it for the love of what they're doing, and it's a little bit of give and take. And I want to bring people's attention to some indie books. And when I read Becstar, um, it kind of reminded me of that. This reminded me of a book I would have picked up in my back in the day. My old comic book store had a special little rack for the indies. They didn't get put up on the wall with Marvel and DC. They were like
Yeah.
back
Hmm.
of the bus books. But that was the rack that I loved because I was like, what's all this weird stuff? And
Yeah.
it was cool. Some was cool stuff. And this book kind of reminded. Today, indies aren't the
Thank you.
same. Indies are kind of like Marvel Junior, DC Junior.
Hmm.
There's just small studios, and they're putting
Yeah.
a lot of them are doing licensed products, and it's like. But this book felt like a, something fully in the creator's hands. Am I right about
Mm.
that? Did Mad Cave Studio have any call on this? Did they?
No, I mean, I worked with Mark London and Chris Fernandez on sort of a basic idea, um, and then I basically had carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. They wanted a sort of cowboy bebop ish kind of comic, and they were fans of She Said Destroy, so they reached out to me about doing something like that.
Okay. Oh, I could kind
And
of
they,
see the Cowboy Bebopish now. I didn't think about that
yeah,
when I was
so
reading it, but
yeah, so they want something like that, and I was like, okay, and you know, they had some ideas, and then I was like, well, what if we did this? And you know, I really fleshed it out. You know, came up with the name and a lot of other things. They had, yeah, they had like some idea of what they wanted, but I really was mostly left to my own devices. There was no pushback on anything in terms of what I was coming up with for this, because I stuck to the idea that they kind of wanted,
okay.
like I was saying, like a cowboy bebopish kind of thing. And I
So
was
they
like, all
kind of
right,
just gave you some idea of like themes and just
mhm,
general feel of what they were looking to publish, and
yeah,
you just sort of put the triangle peg in the triangle hole.
yeah.
All right. So who's the artist?
Yeah, Lorenzo. I got like I'm gonna butcher his name because I never say it out
Man, I
loud.
was hoping you were going to be able to
But
correct me so we would all know how to pronounce it.
no, it's fine. It's he's great though. I finally actually talked to him. Calangelli, that's it. Calangelli. But I finally actually talked to him, like in a video chat the other week. We had never actually like talked face to face before.
Oh,
He's in Italy,
okay.
but yeah, we had found him because he was a finalist in the Platforms Comics like anthology contest. And my buddy Eric Palicki was one of the judges there, and we were talking about it. He was showing me some of the stuff, and it was like this guy. It's like it was one of those contests that seemed like it wasn't fair because like that he had a story in it, and then like there were all these other stories, and it was like, yeah, I don't know, this is a clear winner. So Eric was kind of like, oh, I might come up with something for him, and I was like, I might have something for him right now. Would you be cool with that? And
um,
so what I did is I sent the anthology to Chris Fernandez. And when I did that, I didn't point that guy's story out. I intentionally pointed another story out just to see what would happen.
mm-hmm.
This was a way for me to confirm what Eric and I were thinking, that that Lorenzo was like the guy in this book and that he had a great style. So I was like, oh, I was thinking maybe of this artist. I don't know, but why don't you look through it? And Chris got back to me like pretty quick, being like, I don't know about that one, but this Lorenzo guy. So I was like, all right, I think we figured out how this was going to go.
Now you were kind enough to present some the pages from the book without the lettering in here.
Yeah.
So those of you guys can see the art from the book as if you were in the shop flipping through it, and see what it's like. And I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm encouraging everyone to go and read the book. One of the things that stuck out to me about his art was a lot of up and comers, and in the indie scene, it's like that. You're playing in the minor leagues, you're hoping to make the majors.
Sure.
Everyone focuses on their figure drawing. Seems typical. It's like learn how to draw the human figure, draw, and everything else takes a back seat. And Lorenzo has very solid understanding of backgrounds, the importance of backgrounds, and it's one of the unsung heroes of the book. And so a lot of these scenes really work because like I have on the screen here, we got the characters kind of in the city, but I want to know what the city looks like. I want to get a feel of the world that we're in. Yeah. It is a little bit cartoony, but I think that is kind of the feel of what the book was trying to achieve. The character designs, is that pure Lorenzo? How much did you work with him?
That's almost purely Lorenzo. There were a little like Becstar was more or less like going for something like that. Like a lot of the designs we wanted it to be, and I think this shows like with the main cast there, like something like casual. Didn't want it to look like people were in like uniforms and all that kind of stuff.
Mad Cave has some art things that I hijacked from their site. So I thought this was pretty cool, seeing some of the art designs. Here's the spaceship that they have. Yeah. Now, I'm not making fun of the book in any way, because I am a person who very much likes tropes, and I like reusing things very much. When I read this book, my first thing was, man, Joe is just taking every Harrison Ford movie and throwing it into one comic. I felt a bit of Indiana Jones. I felt a bit of Han Solo. And of course, then you have the ship. And were these designs, like I said, were these some of your things, or did you just kind of like, hey, Lorenzo, there's a ship. They have a ship, and he's just like going to town?
It was closer to the latter. I mean, I had some input. I'm like, this ship should be, it shouldn't be like top of the line. It should be like little junky. It should be something that like like 2 or 3 people could like comfortably live in. Like it should be a certain size that like could accommodate some living spaces. Like that kind of stuff. And I sent like a whole mood board over. Okay. I sent a lot of different character design, a lot of stuff from uh, different video games, things like that. Fantasy Star 4, for example, is one of my favorite video games on Sega Genesis, and sent some stuff from that. Like there were a few things that I sent over, but again, I also want everything to be kind of casual-ish, which is why Becstar is in kind of like, it's like I'm in khakis and a t-shirt kind of thing, and I think it works for this.
So tell me a brief thing. Who is Becstar? Why are people gonna why should we care about this character?
Well, Becstar, what I'm going for with this comic is a story about a person who is at a crossroads in their life. They've basically reached that point in their life where their old friends are gone, and they're stuck with new people in their life that care about them. And Becstar still longs for the good old days with her old friends, the people in her life that used to be important, that were there for her all the time, and they're not there anymore. And now she's stuck with people who either were originally hangers on, like Sally, or people that are thrusted upon her, like Paprika. And she's kind of resentful of that like she's done all these things, she's accomplished in her own right, but she still doesn't get the life she wants. And now, Paprika brings this opportunity to potentially reconnect with her old friends, get the gang back together in that sense, that Nissa was someone who was really important to her. So she's in this weird position of trying to do the right thing for the wrong reasons. And she's going to have to come to a point where she has to decide, is she going to live in the past and do everything she can and potentially lose it all to get back to where she was, or is she going to face reality and choose the people who want to be in her life as the people she's with? And I think that's relatable. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think most of us, the older you get, the more there are people that used to be really important to you that aren't there anymore, and the more people like that start existing in your life, and there are times where you wish you could go back, and even though you can't. And I think that's something that should resonate with people.
So who's Osgar, and why is he like one of Harrison Ford's other villains in Blade Runner?
Well, Osgar, it's funny because the Blade Runner bit is when Paprika, shoots the one guy through the head. But, I sent the reference from that scene in Blade Runner to Lorenzo. But
that's funny. I didn't catch it. Good.
Yeah. But, he's this like robot, this like android cyborg kind of guy. And the idea behind that was to have some contrast between Becstar and Mordecai, that I don't spell it out, but the reasoning being is I wanted to show that Becstar is a more redeemable character because there were actual human beings that were willing to be like her friend, whereas Mordecai needed this like artificial being to do his bidding.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties behind the scenes.
You're good.
Who would... Oh, here we go. Here's Mordecai. So Mordecai is one of these people that's from Becstar's past life.
Mm-hmm.
What's his deal? Why is he such a menace?
Well, his whole deal is he got the consumption amulet, and basically he was already a greedy person, and this is like amplified that to just pure conquest for the sake of it. And he's looking for Nissa because he wants her creation gauntlet, because he feels that the only way he can ever satiate that hunger for constant consumption is to have a tool that would allow him uh, to consume to his heart's content whatever energy he needed to continue. Uh, and in doing so, Mordecai is also at a crossroads, though a more desperate one, because he's also clinging to the past.
So, for those of you who are unfortunate enough not to have read this book, one of the deals is there are these special relics that the various characters have discovered in the past parts of the story, like the consumption amulet as being one of them, that bestow upon special powers, I guess you would say. And I thought that was one of the neat things when I was first reading the book. A little bit of me was like, oh, here we go. We got the I forget what it's even called now, but the thing where the term for where you always have to find the thing.
The MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin, yeah. I forgot the name. I was like, here we go. We got a MacGuffin story, but it really wasn't. It was, and it served to separate the characters from just being like, oh, look, it's another Firefly crew type thing. And it like having these special powers, and I'm a sucker for special powers. I love superheroes and things like that. So I was like, oh, cool. Like the luck dagger I thought was really neat. And I really liked the use of it that Becstar, it wouldn't always work out in the exact way she planned. Sometimes things would just go swimmingly and it'd be like, hey. And then other times it would just be like, that didn't go exactly like I was expecting it, which of course keeps a reader on the toes. And I thought that was really cool. And it served a purpose also of a little bit of world building, because I've seen the luck dagger in action, but I haven't seen the other three relics in action yet. So I'm very curious to see what they can do. Are we going to see that sort of stuff in future issues?
Yeah, we see we see them all working. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Who would you say is the target audience for this book? Like, I know anyone can pick it up. No book is necessarily just for only certain people, but who's this most likely going to appeal to?
It probably skews like a little younger in terms of, I think, not that young, but that like 16 to 35 demographic. I think I don't feel like there's a lot in this book that would make it appeal too heavily to one like gender or the other. It would probably skew male, but I could see a lot of women readers also enjoying it.
Okay. I was just curious at what, as the creator, where you were kind of going. From my perception as a reader, as a 40-year-old male, I definitely could see this being appealing to women, but I enjoyed it as well, too. I feel like the art brought it lighter than the book was. I feel like if you had a different artist who was like really just had more serious tones and more graphic stuff, like this book would have felt more violent and stuff than it was. And the art made it feel more instead like he's like, it was like 16-year-olds and more hip and just kind of like lighthearted fun.
And there is still a lot of cussing and violence in every issue.
There is. That was kind of weird. I was like, if Joe had just toned these scenes down just a little bit, this really could have been a kid's book. Like, because
Yeah,
everything else that happens, there's no real, like, there's no sex, there's no
yeah,
politics, there's no preaching about stuff. It's just an
yeah,
adventure story about a
yeah,
character getting in over their head.
yeah, I think that's how it goes for the rest of it. As far as I can think of right now, I don't think we got into anything other than that. But but yeah, to me, I've always thought, like, even as a kid, when I'd watch something that was supposed to like appeal to kids or like be kid friendly, and someone would say like, "Oh, crud" and stuff like that, or crap. I'm like, no one talks like that, and it always sucked me out. Like even as a kid, I would rather people just talk how people talk than to change it around just to appeal to kids like that. I'm like, oh, no kid wants that. I've never, like, I when I was a kid, and you probably, I feel like you probably feel somewhat similarly, is I didn't want to read and watch stuff for kids like after a certain age, and that age was still pretty young.
Yeah, me too.
By
Yeah,
like the time you're like 10, I mean, by the time you're in like fourth, fifth grade, you're like, that's screw this, like kids
it felt
shit.
very
Like,
pandering. Felt like
yeah,
it was like, what do you think I'm stupid? Like,
yeah,
um, for me, my pet peeve
hmm,
was always when they would make up cuss words.
hmm.
Like probably the one of the most famous is Battlestar Galactica. They use the word
What the
frack,
frack? Yeah, hmm,
and it's like all the time. Ah, oh, what the frack, And it's like, hey,
hmm,
we're not using the F word, so we can use this all the time. And it was just like, it just sounds corny.
yeah,
I'm much more forgiving if you say like, what the hell, or aw crap.
hmm,
Those are people do say like that, and so you can kind of get away
yeah,
with it. But that was always my perception. Um,
yeah. I liked it in the good place. There was like a good reason for that.
mhm.
But yeah.
So for those of us who have read this first issue, do you have any teases about what's to come? Any-
Yeah, all the issues primarily take place somewhere else. So, in terms of getting through issue 5, we don't go back to this place. We only go to new places from here.
Okay.
So there's that. There's for like the next issue, we go through a planet. It's a little, well, I had fun working with Lorenzo on it. We get to see creatures in the next one, so Lorenzo had a lot of fun drawing those. We get we finally get like a flashback that has like Anissa like actually as a person, like not just that like quick kind of like we see her in like the one panel or a couple of panels rather flashback on the one page. In this first issue, we get like a little bit more of her. Um, yeah, yeah, I think there's a lot there that could be interesting. We definitely go more into what Anissa means to Becstar.
Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um. Well, as we come down the final stretch of tonight's show, let's just a few little things. Just back to the personal side. What comics today are drawing your attention? Are there any that aren't yours?
Uh, yeah, no. I mean, some. I've also been liking Nottingham from Mad Cave. Uh, doing stuff with these some of these smaller publishers, it puts their books on like your radar in a way they might not otherwise be. But that's been something I've been enjoying. I'm loving Haha at Image.
Okay.
That's fantastic. Let me see. Like there's some of the stuff over at DC. I have been enjoying Green Lantern It's a lot because I'm a big Legion of Superheroes fan, and it's really setting up a lot of stuff to happen in the Legion of Superheroes universe. So,
Well, you kind of have to be a
or the
Legion of Superheroes fan to like DC these days because all their characters have their own Legion.
yeah, but it's yeah. So that I've been enjoying. I've been enjoying like some random stuff from DC. It's been fine. The the Infinite Frontier stuff, like the actual stuff directly related to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been liking that. There was the issue about the President Superman. It might have been a digital first. I read it digitally. I forget if it was if they made the print copy or not. But I enjoyed that. Yeah, Robin was fine. Trying to think like over at Marvel, uh, every once in a while something comes out from the X office that's not too bad. I think what else? Yeah, some of the stuff from Vault, like Autumnal, I enjoyed. I've been meaning to check out Hollow Heart. I haven't yet. I heard it's very good. Fairly recently, Scout's Honor over at Aftershock it's a good one. Aftershock puts out a decent stuff.
Okay.
I've enjoyed a few things from them over the years.
What about TV? Do you watch TV?
A little bit.
Any shows that are your particular towards?
I mean, I've been watching a bunch of the superhero stuff because I'm on these things and people talk about them, and I want to make sure I have an idea of what I'm talking about. But other than that, I don't watch that much TV during the day. I go through cycles, I guess, but it's been a long time since I've really sat down and really watched something outside of the stuff that I think I need to watch. Like I'm going to be like, oh God, I got to watch Loki when that starts. It's
right. I feel like that's
where
my place nowadays, where like TV is more like a chore. Like it's like I have like a tick box. I'm like, oh, gotta make sure I watch that episode. But there was one for me that stood out. I was really, really surprised by Invincible.
I really liked Invincible.
That really won me over, especially by the end. It's probably one of the best episodes of television. When you talk about an ending,
sure.
That for a single season, I don't know where it's gonna go, but for a single season, man, that last episode was like a perfect landing.
I got to catch up on Doom Patrol. Oddly enough, I didn't finish the second season, but I do like it. Like that one, I genuinely liked.
Okay, and you're a Doom Patrol fan, so that says something.
Yeah, I'll eventually get, but like it's because I just don't watch that much.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm just curious.
No, for sure. I mean, it turns into something where I'm usually reading, or like sometimes I'll just save like the TV watching for when I'm hanging out with people. Like I have a buddy I usually see on Saturdays, and we'll watch movies and we'll watch like episodes of The Simpsons and stuff like that. So that's fun. Like before I go to bed, I put on episodes like Arrested Development or Community or something like that. Something light. But yeah, it's been a bunch of it. I rewatched the movie Southland Tales the other day because I was talking about it on a live stream with.
Did you understand that
Hot
movie?
For Philosophers. I did, but I've seen it like a bunch of times before. Like that was probably maybe the fourth time I watched it.
I need to talk to you after sometime behind the scenes then, because I watched it and I enjoyed watching it, and then it was over and I scratched my head and said, I don't understand what happened.
Well, I mean, the guy also wrote Donnie Darko.
Yeah, I know. And I loved it, Donnie Darko. And I was like, I went into Southland Tales and it's got The Rock and it's got, what's his nuts?
Got a lot of people. Sean William Scott.
Sean William Scott. Yeah, thank you very much. And I love their pairing. They had a great chemistry in The Rundown. Yeah, and I was like, oh, I get to see these guys again, and it's by the guy who did Donnie Darko. Sign me up. It's science. Everything about that movie was like, and it was fun to watch. It was over, and I was like, I didn't understand it. I feel stupid because I feel like it's me.
And Wallace Shawn is amazing in it. He's barely in it, but all the scenes he's in are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good time. Yeah, I don't know, but I think I rewatched Mallrats for the same reason, to
Oh, I
talk
love
with pop
Mallrats.
culture philosophers on talk about that movie. That was a fun rewatch. And I rewatched Clerks the other day.
Oh, oh,
I
good
rewatched
times.
Clerks and the first Resident Evil movie,
Oh, okay. Those
which
ones
is
I'm not as big of a fan of, but it's still.
yeah, don't but it's very stupid. I mean, it's fine. I watch a lot of stupid things. Most things are very stupid.
Sometimes stupid can be great
Oh
if it
yeah,
if it
like
hits the right chord, like
mhm.
um so
I'm a big fan of awful, like just garbage cinema, like The Room, Samurai Cop, Birdemic. Uh, one of which I saw probably a year and a half ago, and I've rewatched since. But what was it? After Last Season. That's a that's a garbage tier movie with like no budget, but is like trying to be cerebral. And that was a nice change of pace, because most of these movies are just very stupid, but this one like at least didn't think it was stupid, and that was nice.
so we got a question in the chat from Ryuk224. He wants to know,
Please.
how exactly would you convince hesitant readers who look at the cover of Becstar and think that this is just a woke or typical pandering book?
I mean, I think you brought up uh, some of the points here, like just before with it's just an adventure story. This is not an allegory for anything beyond like friendship. Like yeah, I mean that's what it's about. It's not about things beyond that. I I'd be shocked if people read into it that way, that it was about something more than that. But
Well, I can assure you, and someone, you guys know me, that I'm highly sensitive to that sort of stuff, and I can assure you
mhm,
there isn't any of that in this book. But it's an understandable question because we live in a world where appearances create assumptions, and the
sure,
characters from the book are designed in such a way that when you see them in media, people that look like that it typically goes hand in hand with certain ideologies and things like that. This book, I would say, and Joe, you can step in with any counter opinions or anything if you wish, but I would say,
sure,
guys, when you look at this book, think of this as a book that's off in space, like Star Wars, and it's got characters in the future. It's sci-fi, and they look weird because it's not Earth today. And
hmm,
they might have pink hair, they might have blue hair. Who knows? Main character has white hair. Don't read into that. Don't go, oh, I saw a person down today that looked like that, and they acted this way, so therefore this comic's like that. That would be an unfortunate mistake. The book is exactly, it feels like Firefly in its tone. If you are a fan of Firefly, I think then this
hmm,
is a book that might reach out to you. Um,
yeah,
it has, and the characters, like I said, they're young characters, so if you hate young characters, maybe you might not like that. And they're off on an adventure, and people are after them. And it's really simple. Like, it's simple in the sense that thematically, it's not trying to preach to you anything. Um,
yeah.
so, uh,
I think something I strive to do is I never want the characters I never want to write in a way where I come off like a prick, in the sense that I'm not trying to. I don't want to write in a way where I'm like, look at how clever I am. Did you see that thread I put there, that this is actually about this thing, and I'm sure clever. And I hate that kind of stuff. And I've read some indie comics recently where you get that kind of stuff. You're like, oh, you're a Kate Bush fan, and you name those are named after a Kate Bush song, or that's a you're referencing this media. You're cool now. I think you're really cool, and I want to hang out with you sometime because you also listen to Neutral Milk Hotel. Like,
Right.
get the fuck out of here. I'm
Now,
so done
I
with that.
I debated back and forth of whether to do a review of the book. I don't know if you've seen my reviews or how I do things, Joe, but I felt a little awkward about doing it when it's someone that I know and who's been on my channel,
Sure.
and I just felt like there's um, what's that term, like conflict of interest.
Hmm.
And I just I don't like when I see other people do that. Like, hey, I'm
Hmm.
reviewing my friend's book. It's like, so, but I do want to give my opinions out. So I thought doing an interview with you, letting you talk about the
Sure.
book, uh, talk about yourself, your influences, how you did, would be something good. And then I'll just tell you guys now,
Yeah.
quick, my quick thing about the book is it's a fun adventure in
Mhm.
space with young, enthusiastic, juvenile, well, not juveniles, young adults,
Sure.
and um, there's zero preachiness, 0% pretension. If you look in this book, this is not coffee shop snobbery, thinking like no one's trying to write, you know, the next what it's just a
Mhm.
fun comic book. It's what you want in a comic book,
Yeah.
and I give it a thumbs up. I honestly um, didn't know what to expect going in. I did have my
Mhm.
own presumptions judging the book by its cover,
Mhm.
because media has that effect. Society trains us to have assumptions. So
Mhm.
that's why it's important to do review videos, I think, and to have word of mouth and talk about it so we can overcome those things. I hope you guys will give the book a chance. You can get it at your local LCS. You don't have to go online and order it and pay shipping or do anything. You can just go to your LCS. If they don't have it on the shelf, tell them to order it from Diamond. It's available. Um, you can get the Diamond code right from Mad Cave Studios. If
Yep.
you need the code, most stores don't need that though. You can just look it up.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, my store had no trouble. So do it. Try it out if that's something you're interested in, and if you do like it, spread the word.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Indie books need that love. Joe, I only
Mhm.
have one final question for you. As someone who's,
Sure.
you're pretty close with a bigger YouTuber, guy named Perch. Um,
Mhm.
does he really? I mean, you've seen him. Does he really look like the leader of China? We all want to know.
I, he doesn't look like the leader of China as far as we know. You're assuming that there's like no Illuminati shit going on.
Well, I mean, his avatar.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have
There's
to do today, guys.
that.
Thank you all for being here and listen to us talk about this book. Try out indie comics. Try out
Yes,
Becstar.
please.
Hashtag read good comics. I want to thank Joe for his time today, being here. Um, thank you guys for hanging out with us. And it's every Wednesday we're doing something here, 8 p.m. Next Wednesday will be Criminal Cast. And Joe, any final words?
No, again, not judging a book by its cover is always good. If you like this, if you want to check out other stuff from Mad Cave, I do recommend Nottingham. I think that's been a good ride, but just a slight tangent. I've also worked on some other book. I've edited some books. I edited Kim and Kim, the third volume, and again, like not judging a book by its cover. I'm assuming no one listening to this or watching this is probably going to care about Kim and Kim spoilers from like 3 years ago. Uh, is that fair to
I
say,
would say
Ash?
probably.
Yeah. So one of the things that we got to do is the one of the main like villainous characters is Kim Q's father, and Kim Q in the book is the trans character. And in the 5th issue of the miniseries, after this whole thing where she has all these problems with her father doesn't treat her right, her father misgenders her father's not there to help her, all this stuff, and there's all this conflict. Her father's put in a position where he has to either give up her daughter, or give up his daughter, or give up his right hand man to this gang, basically, as a way to make up for the bullshit that Kim Q had caused on one of his yachts. And when push comes to shove, the dad gave up his right hand man over giving him his daughter. And then it turns out this whole time that, like, they were after this is silly. The big treasure, like the MacGuffin that they were trying to get, was like an original recording of Heaven is a Place on Earth. It's silly. But they finally get it, but it's not what it should be. It's not actually an original recording. So Kim Q plays it in private, and it's her when she was young practicing the song on her guitar, and her dad coming into the bedroom, to sit with her and, teach her, try to help her play guitar. So with that was important to me, to show that there is this depth, that we were exploring these characters from different perspectives, that this guy who is the villain, who was this like transphobic villain, who had done right in certain instances, that there were layers to this character, that there were layers to things that were going on, and that Kim Q is like all choked up at the end over this. And I think that even sometimes there are stories out there that people might judge by the cover, but sometimes look into it. Sometimes, maybe you check, Amazon reviews or Goodreads, or you check if anyone's done videos on it, because sometimes it is different.
That's surprising. That ending. That sounds like a great ending, actually.
Yes.
From a book that I had zero interest in before. So,
yeah.
I guess that's a great example. Don't judge a book by cover. Hopefully, Joe.
Yep.
Your ending now. You've set the bar. Becstar better live up. Can Becstar be as good?
I think I came up with a solid ending here. I think it's something that ending so far with issue 5 that I think it's gonna ride that line of being not quite what people expect while also being satisfying. Like, that's the kind that's what I want. That's what I want in an ending. I don't want something predictable, but it still has to make sense, and it also has to be satisfying. Endings are tough.
Oh yeah, it's probably the hardest thing about writing is an ending.
Yeah. So that's what I tried to do. I think I accomplished it. I'm not saying like, oh, it's going to be the best ending of a comic you read all year. Like, none of that. But I think in just terms of like a modest goal of creating an ending that you don't quite see coming, but it's also satisfying, I think I did it.
Cool. Well, I am along for the ride. I'm going to be here through issue 5 because I liked issue 1 that much. This is definitely better than most Marvel. And I would probably even say even DC these days. So congratulations, Joe, on a good book.
Thank you.
I hope people get out of their comfort zone and try out something that maybe on the surface doesn't seem initially is going to be their cup of tea, and try something new. Indie books are great, especially, like I said, you get that raw garage band feeling. There's something pure about it that is just not in corporate comics. And you don't have to give up one for the other. That's the other thing too.
Oh yeah.
So,
No,
so
I read all sorts of stuff.
so try it out. Joe, thanks once again. I know you're
Yeah,
got short on time and we probably went over,
it's good.
so
It's all good. You're fine.
we're gonna take off. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys that
Yes.
if you can joined us afterwards and watch the replay. We thank you as well, and have a great night.
Yes. Thanks.